Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're all strapped in, sat down and comfortable on this cold day. And again, welcome to episode 3, UK 8 Post, wherever you are, done with you. I'm your host, Dan Nostalgia. And today we're covering Dog Soldiers, released on the 10th of May 2002. Directed, edited, screenplay written by Neil Marshall, starring Emma Cleesby, Sean Pertwee, Kevin Kidd, and Liam Cunningham. Special makeup by Image Effects. And the score by Mark Thomas. And a Kismet Entertainment film. Well, the werewolf and horror with British folklore, where do we go with that? We could go down the route of there's been stories of howling in the full moon since the 18th century and so forth, and in folklore writing and stories, which really adds to the mythos of the Frankenstein vampire. So really going down the Hammer House sort of story there. Stories. But it's an interesting one. And it definitely with me, there's never been no substantial proof. So where do we go with this? I'll leave it up to you folks. You tell me what you think. Now, character dynamic, standout performances, we got this. There's definitely some some well written work on this project. It's a lot of stuff here with Dog Soldiers, and the soldiers, wow, they nailed it. They got it set down to a T. And you can see the makeup and the special effects. It's outstanding. It really is. It just goes hand in hand with the work that's being done behind the scenes in terms of writing. Less practical, but it definitely sits well. Cinematography, the location, reflecting on a Scottish Highland environment, but actually it was filmed in Luxembourg, with secondary filming being shot in Glen Affric area because of such things. And again, it's just definitely got that UK feel about it. It was shot on private grounds too, being that the UK weather, it rained for 3 weeks, 3 weeks, and I'm thinking, wow, and you'd be sat around 3 weeks waiting to do the scenes. Obviously things had to be done, things had changed. And they changed to Luxembourg. And but a miniature scale model was used for the actual farmhouse. Obviously the inside, the interior was shot purely in a studio setting. There was a lot of metric failures with the werewolf heads, a lot of the mechanical problems. Only worked once, but still never really noticed considering how the tone of the film and how the bodies moved. Well, how the film is it's a horror adaptation of the Battle of Rorke's Drift. If you think about it, it definitely has that feel about it. You'd say, wouldn't you? Because it's a group of soldiers held up, outnumbered, but they're still holding their own. It's to the best they can. And this is what they're doing. So I felt that did carry a lot of something about it. The provocative notion of spider senses are definitely tingle on this one. The subplot involving Captain Ryan and the reason for being in the Highlands, the secretive nature of his mission and why he was involved. Involved the army unit of Private Cooper, and then there was further answers to whom signed off on the training exercise, as it was called. We're all left in a mystery, which I found was up in the air, and I thought I could have, maybe if you'd had a sequel, you could have had something, maybe a follow-on, could have had something there. And and then my second provocative notion is I got my spike, the senses tingling, working overtime. With us was Private Cooper's military report, later handed in to the MOD. And of course, how did they handle this? And what were their responses? I'd say, because there's a lot of mystery about this, some of this film, and it intrigued me. So on this side of it was good creative genius on behalf of Neil Marshall. Done a good job, and delivered, written and stayed within budget, and still managed to create a great concept for the story. When you think of werewolf films, you're thinking about Silver Bullet, Howler, Wolfman, it's many others. Collis Bauer. I'll be butchering that name a few times there. Correct me on that one, folks. And there's a lot. There's a lot of. See, to go back to that question of werewolf lore. It is mysterious because it's, to me now, I'm thinking of Silver Bullet when you think of a great horror film. But The Howling collab with Atkins, can't quite get the first name, from the Fog, and there was a lot about that which I loved. And then you had the Wolfman, Jack Nicholson, Michelle Pfeiffer, brilliant effects. And then obviously when you really are thinking of werewolf films, you're thinking of the granddaddy, the Godfather, which is American Werewolf in London. This is definitely the prime example, and that is where it goes. Excuse me for a second, folks. I'm gonna sip my drink. And American Werewolf in London just takes werewolf films to a whole other level. Let's be honest. And I don't want to say too much on what I'm saying now, but I've got a theory that this was meant to be the unofficial sequel to American Werewolf in London. So we'll just leave it at that. But regards to everything on this so far, we can cover, as we know, Luxembourg definitely carries a British environment in terms of location, setting, greenery, trees, shrubbery, so forth. We know how easy it can be done, and the cinematography works great. I gotta be honest, Neil Marshall, he allows his team to really find the core of their talent and put it to use. And I think this was well put out in that way. Gotta see it that way. I mean, it carries its own weight and it can hold its own. So we know not to make no joke on that. That is serious. So, and it does do a great job. I mean, special effects on this thing when you think of, I was watching a video on YouTube, and they were talking about how this had done well over across the waters in the US, and they were saying that how these things used to turn up at Comic Con, and people used to see them, and there would be a core fan base that know these creatures, and that was the pinnacle for it, really, being the fact that they did carry an American following, and still Neil Marshall can hold his head up on that one, and this is one of those films. Let's be honest, it's it's amazing in that way, and then you know what you're doing. It's a straight werewolf film. Soldiers. This ain't for the faint hearted. Yeah, we know that. But we do know that Neil Marshall did want to continue to make more. There was, I suppose, there was issues somewhere in that regard. So there was those obstacles. I mean, I said it took Black Adam 10 years to get off the ground, and we finally got it and did Shazam. So it doesn't always pan it well, thinking that, but still, Marshall got in hand, and Marshall we trust. Breaking away from the normality of werewolf films creates the pack mentality, which you only see in the animal kingdom. You don't often see it with associated with werewolf films, glossing over the lone wolf and the transformation origins, which he does, and he carries that well without showing you how they become that way, which I kind of liked. Didn't bother me. I was happy. Kept me happy. The blood was there. The gore was there. The amount of violence was there. So that is very important. And still, it always goes that way. Neil Marshall did speak with Darkside magazine, and the news from Bloody Disgusting Tales from the Bow Crew was in podcast in February 2001. Was regarding the trilogy plan, receiving approval from his father, a former British soldier, and also able to aid his son on the script, which is why the soldiers often sound. Everyone sounds different. Everyone's got a different accent. Everyone's got a different slang terminologies. So that definitely engaged more with the audience, especially the regiment types. So it did hit the nail on the head there. Neil Marshall did avoid using CG as much as possible, not being the greatest at that time in 2002, considering we're in 2003. And he was aiming to get the practical effects of American Werewolf in London on set, but unable to maximize his budget for the transformations. Like, to me, I would have loved to have seen that. I think this is, like I said, I think this would have been the one. This would have been a big pickup point. And then, of course, there was an interview with Brian Knight, free, talking to Brian and Patrick O'Toole in February 2020, discussing tidbits and details from behind the scenes and an interesting new understanding. So check those out. I would highly recommend you do that. Yeah. And they were spin-off sequels were already on the cards, but the director Neil Marshall never returned to the formulate those plans, which is a shame really, because it would have been good if he had managed to muster some of those up. I'd have liked to see what he could have done with that, but it never quite come around. And again, subscribe, folks. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, and leave a comment, please. Thank you. I need 10,000 subscribers. 10,000 subscribers. Hit me up, folks. Hit me up. The essence of this film also came from the Night of the Living Dead's main characters encounters some unnatural forces and forced to hold up in a farmhouse to survive. This is where they really go hand in hand. It also fits nicely to what they're doing. You can see what's going on. And if you've never seen Night of the Living Dead or Return of the Living Dead or any of the films, I suggest you pay attention to those. Just suggesting. Folks. The film's title originating from the very same novel, Dog Soldiers, and the novel being of a different story. At the time, it was borrowing the name, not the novel. The script was original and still stayed within walking the fine line. But he still carried it out, as you do. Cooper's backstory has been removed, being more character-driven plot, using up a lot of screen time, adding more to the Cooper and Riley conflict, which builds up the problems and confusion sometimes. Megan, Captain Ryan relationship, now that was interesting enough. The reason how she treated him different during the film seemed off, and having a greater understanding without explaining on screen, which could be down to the fact, I think, that the scenes were removed. So they weren't able to get the full explanation out there for you, or understanding. The film was well received by both critics and audiences alike, but sadly never materialised. Ask if the film had been pushed back a year, would there be more success with the cinematic blockbuster release within that same year of Die Another Day, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, Spider-Man, Gangs in New York, Lord of the Ring, Blade 2, Sum of All Fears, The Ring, Minority Report, Scorpion King, Star Wars, Attack of the Clones, Born Identity. I mean, there's some big films there. Here's some big films. It might have even sat well briefly, but I knocked out the park once those were released. The numbers up on them, they just jump the stupid proportions, and big film industries do cash in on them very big and very, very fast. The original screenplay went through 4 or 5 changes to narrow down the banter and dialogue, which most scripts go through this process in order to obtain that purity, authenticity of something, if you know what I mean. Find that core of the character of the story. Deleted scenes and run times at certain scenes explaining characters' relationships, as we spoke on with the Megan and the Ryan scenario. And rumours that production intended on heading to the States to sell the film, but the meeting never come to fruition that day, the day of September 11th, 2001. Later selling the film to the Sci-Fi Channel, gathering a cult following. Also, the American audience were not able to grasp the British slang and terminology used throughout the script. Details revealed that they largely thought the commentary, they had to go through the commentary version to get this. And of course, this was followed up with Dog Soldiers Fresh Meat in 2021. I haven't seen this yet. It's produced. I'm not sure on that one. I forget the details. But we know Marshall. Neil Marshall has been involved with Doomsday, Black Sails, Game of Thrones, Constantine, Hannibal, Timeless, Westworld, Lost in Space, Hellboy, and The Descent. So we know he's definitely made his own mark on that way. There is definitely some great film quotes in this. When Sergeant Wells responding to about his well-being, just a touch of gas while Cooper is bandaging his bloody bandages. Definitely made me have a moment chuckle there. And of course, Spoon, I hope I'll give you the shit you wimp. Last words. I did like that one. I did. In 2004, the Comic Con in the United States, people dressed as the werewolves with animatronic heads receiving much attention and recognition. As it would, I would love to have seen these. I'd love to see them over here, the Comic Cons in this country. I think it'd be amazing. It would be great, even to see some of the actors. Because get some autographs, just like opportunity. See these people. Robert England, John Carpenter, Matt Groening, Guillermo del Toro have all been acknowledged as fans of Dog Soldiers. And seriously, that is quite a fan base, considering this man's probably on same on in terms of fandom. Marshall's a big fan of these guys' work just as much as they've enjoyed seeing his film. That's amazing. It would get me giddy. Critics compared the werewolf bodies to the alien muscle-toned bodysuits used in Alien and Aliens and franchises, which, okay, you could see the slight comparisons. You can also compare them in some way, but in essence, there's the differences, and I think that's just enough to stand out just a little bit. And I think that just enough to change it, keep it. One thing I do like was the black and white view of the camera work, signifying the werewolf's view as of a dog or an animal, almost similar to the heat signature view from the Predator, which also gives off that vibe, like the hunter's vision, looking at their prey, which is brilliant. It was good camera work considering. So it's a little bit of borrowing, but borrowing in the right way, and he's paying homage. You can't go wrong with that. I like what he's done with that. That is great. Neil Marshall directed Game of Thrones, as I've already said to you, and obviously you know this as well, probably some of you, but and some of you already know this too, and others don't. So this is why you know. He directed the Battle of Blackwater, featuring Liam Cunningham, which speaks volumes in my book. Definitely speaks volumes. That definitely was a big episode. That is so many with the Dragonfire. Wow. Have to rewatch that one. Dog Soldiers is feeling more like the unspoken and unofficial sequel to An American Werewolf in London, despite the official sequel in 1997 with An American Werewolf in Paris, which I gotta say, that's a load of shit, the sequel. Let's just be honest. Let's put the cards on the table and, you can't polish this up and say it's good. So it is what it is. For American Werewolf in London, it's a classic that should never have been followed up unless it was Dog Soldiers. That's my opinion. And then Neil Marshall directed, written the screenplay, and edited everything for his own film, so he considered himself a triple threat, a legend in many ways. Carries a pinnacle that not often every director can do. Gento, Barber, Carpenter, all these people are great and talented people, but could they do multiple things? I'm sure they could. They've been credited for the same film. I'm sure they have. But today, Marshall's Day. Marshall's Day. Liam Cunningham, an interesting character, an interesting actor. This character was attacked by a werewolf, Captain Ryan, later becoming one. And in Game of Thrones, he was later employed by the Stark family, whose house sigil being the symbol of the wolf, actually owns a wolf, or Jon Snow, depending on your point of view. Jon Stark, Jon Snow, whichever you want to call him. So that's an interesting turn of events there, isn't it? Definitely, I like that one. Good little fan theory pluck day from the brain. And with Kevin McKidd played Tommy in Trainspotting in 1996. Danny Boyle alongside Ewan McGregor, Robert Carlyle, John Lee Miller, and Ewan Brennan. Brilliant film. I remember watching that as 16 years old. Interesting film. Of course, Kevin McKidd voiced Batman in 2013's animated film Justice League. And in the 2013 and 14, Sean Pertwee played Alfred Pennyworth in the television series of Gotham, both within a similar time frame of working for DC and Warner Brothers, which at the time that's good employment. Get to work with DC. Got to work with DC. Big huge Batman fan over here. Big Batman fan. And then come down to, of course, many of this cast are featured in many British television soaps and shows throughout the years, such as Coronation Street, Touch of Frost, Poirot, Doctor Who, Heartbeat, Merlin, Luther, one of my favourites, Camelot, Tudors, which is a decent show, Catherine Tate, Boone, Lewis, Harry Enfield and Friends, Casualty, Cracker, Holby City, one of my mother's favourites, Hotel Babylon, Doctors, Murphy's Law, Skins, Cold Feet, and Inspector Morse, which I enjoyed, and Vera. Kevin McKidd did lend his voice to play Fenrir in the Star Wars Rebels in 2016-17. And again, I'm a big Star Wars fan, the original trilogy, George Lucas, all the way, bro. Nothing else. Everything else has been rocky roads. But I do love Mandalorian. Let's not beat around the bush. Mandalorian is just straight up the best thing since after Return of the Jedi. Sean Pertwee often lends his voice work to video game companies, Sony and Microsoft, playing various characters, narrating on documentaries based on wars, social events and historical events. A distinguished voice often compared and placed alongside other actors with distinguished voices such as James Earl Jones, Morgan Freeman, Ryan Blessed, David Attenborough, Crystal Walken, and Samuel L. Jackson. It's quite a compliment, that is. Go along with that, wouldn't you? Emma Cleesby did play Catherine Sinclair in Doomsday in 2008. Character could be compared to Kate Beckinsale's portrayal of Selena in Underworld Anthology. And then you can compare that to Red Sparrow, Black Widow. So there's that heroine-esque type of sort of feel about that. And then let's have a look at the big film features from Sean Pertwee. You know, we starred in 51st State, or Formula 51, if you know another title. I didn't know that. Event Horizon, which is one of my favourite sci-fi horrors ever, alongside Alien, best things to say Alien. In fact, it's almost like a comparison to Hellraiser. Hellraiser-esque, if you compare them. There's a connection there, if you wanna go down that road. But please leave a comment about that. I'm all ears. And then he starred in Equilibrium. That is just a few of what he's produced. And then Ian Cunningham's featured in some Clash of the Titans remake, Safe House, Harry Brain, which I like those two, The Mummy, and The First Night. And of course, then which they're all good films, some of them. I love The Mummy. And then we get to the Eddie Oswald story, Sergeant Wells, explaining the story from Kuwait 1991, speaking about the smiling devil tattoo on his colleague's buttock, claiming his soul belonged to God, but his flesh belonged to Satan. And on the routine patrol, stepping on an anti-tank mine and spread out for a 100-meter circle, finding parts, mainly blood, but found tattooed flesh, unburnt and intact, freaking the sergeant and the rest of the squad out. Like, could you imagine that? That was an interesting story, gotta be honest. And what he said definitely spoke something. So we know how that one went. So it would have been interesting to have actually seen it as to have seen how he died in a flashback. If you'd seen him walking on the tank line, that would have been something, wouldn't it? Or was that just my imagination really just butchered by horror films? Yeah, I think I could go with the ladder on that one, folks. Could go with the ladder. But the Eddie Oswald story definitely was an interesting one. And yeah, it's interesting to see how that pans out. Because I would have liked to have seen that straight away off the bat. Honestly, loved this film then, and still do now. Great cast of characters, chemistry, witty humour, tension throughout the entirety, built up from the off right till the final act. Military exercises, background, location, scenery were on point. The comparison to the SAS training regime and the Brecon Beacons, practical effects, my favourite, always will be. Still able to go toe to toe with any film in this genre, in my opinion, surpassing most films on CG based. Very underrated and not appreciated enough. Also, glossed over by this many times. Definitely the unspoken sequel to An American Werewolf in London, and underlining to the folklore. One of the most best kept secrets in the British film industry, period. I'm on my own this on physical media. And that's what I can say. I rate this. So, what am I watching right now? Well, I've been watching John Carpenter films. Yes, been watching John Carpenter, and I've been getting into. I've been watching him now for the last few months. Is Partner to Wrexham, Ryan Reynolds, Robbie Young. That's been interesting. Kind of like that one. I do like that one. And yeah, I did like it. I've been enjoying that one a lot, where they be building up Wrexham FC. I'm from Newport, so obviously I'm not a Wrexham fan, but I'm liking what they're doing over there. And this is, it's been a great show. It's funny, as you'd expect, a lot of Deadpool references and so forth, as it is. Disney Plus special. Still, it's enjoyable. So, that has more or less what I've been watching. Like I said, besides a recap on the, so I was catching up on any John Carpenter films that I do enjoy watching again. The Fog. I've been watching, I came across that one last night. I've seen it multiple times, but I just always found myself watching The Fog. So, I can't say it's either that or the thing when it comes to that. So, this is that time, folks. I want to say goodbye. I want to say thank you from my bottom of my heart. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe. Please get notified on any further video and content. And please share, like, and subscribe, and have a good day.